Afternoon and into the evening, and the cloud will continue to increase during the night. Still a bit of drizzly rain pushing through southern Scotland, perhaps into North Wales, northwest England, but for most it'll be another dry night and another fairly warm one as well. Temperatures, certainly most towns and cities, holding up in the teens. What about Sunday? Well, a warm, humid feeling day. There will be a bit more cloud around, especially for Wales, southwest England, northern England to begin with, so a duller day. But even here, I'm hopeful that it will brighten up. Small chance of 1 or 2 showers. Some coasts in the west may stay misty, but for Scotland, Northern Ireland, some good spells of sunshine, and across the southeast as well should be fine once more during Sunday. And temperatures ticking up, going to get hotter still as we head into next week.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could win big this summer. First, there's a fabulous £15,000 in tax-free cash to ensure this summer is special. What would you spend that on? Next, you'll also receive the latest iPhone 15 and a set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction. You have to hurry as lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The woke be with you these days, not the force be with you. And Star Wars, you know, it was the one thing as a kid that brought me and my brother together pretty close, and I love it with all my heart. But ever since Disney took it over, this diversity, equity and inclusion has run rampant throughout it. And actually we've had the actress from the latest Star Wars spin-off, a series on Disney, actually saying that making white people cry was actually what she wanted to do. Have a listen.
When people watch The Hate U Give, what do you want them to walk away with? Because I know everyone has a slightly different feeling.
Well, I mean, white people crying actually was the goal.
Yeah, so that diversity, equity and inclusion running rampant throughout Hollywood and ruining really good franchises. Actually ensuring, apparently, R2-D2, the little robot, you know, that scoots about and gets on the starships and all the rest of it, apparently that could be a lesbian now.
She's half white, this actress. This is what I don't understand. She's half Danish, then half African-American.
I have skin in this game, as you know, with a mixed-race child. Nobody ever sees a mixed-race child as half white. They see them as black. We
used to say that to focus on the colour of someone's skin was rampant racism and therefore we ought to reject it. Now we're saying actually potentially the only thing that we should notice about a person is the colour of their skin.
I don't really think she was actually wanting white people to be sobbing, and it wasn't malicious, but it's just this silly kind of ruination of something that's meant to be entertainment and fun. I wouldn't go as far as to say Star Wars is art. I'm not as
I love some. It is, you know, excluding people. Yeah. It's actually dividing people. Once again, by the colour of their skin, we are teaching people to not like each other.
The People's Channel.
Good morning to you. I'm Ellie Costello alongside Ben Leo, and we're in Westminster this morning, aren't we, for Saturday Morning Live?
Yeah, it looks a bit different, eh? Great to have your company this morning, and we have plenty to get through as well, not least with our panel this morning, the CEO of Youth Vote UK, Alex Cairns, and broadcaster and life coach Jenny Trent Hughes as well.
Yes, we're also going to be talking about the future of British food. Are foreign imports of vegetables a thing of the past? Well, pop star turned farmer, JLS's very own JB Gill, will join us to discuss sustainable farming.
Lucky me, I'm a big JLS fan as well.
Yeah, me too.
Also, we'll sit down this week with the greatest Briton, the amazing young woman who's beaten the 45-year-old world record for the fastest woman to complete the UK Three Peaks Challenge.
That's very... And she is very impressive, actually, Emma, isn't she? Because you did the very same challenge and almost didn't make it.
Well, I didn't do the 3 peaks. I just tried one of them,
You just tried
which
one
was
peak.
a very paltry effort. My friend and I, Carl, hello Carl, we tried to scale Scafell Pike.
Yes.
Ended up camping in some boggy ditch or swamp-like venture, and a big storm arose and we had to escape the mountains. So, yeah, it wasn't very impressive.
It wasn't very good. You managed not even one peak of the 3.
Well, how many have you done?
None, but I wouldn't
None,
try.
there we go. Didn't even bother.
I'm not really an outdoorsy type, but I
No.
admire people who are. So well done, Emma. We can't wait to meet you later. And don't forget, we want to hear from you. This show is nothing without you. So do send in your views on any of the stories that we're talking about today. gbnews.com/you'll say.
Yes, look forward to getting stuck into those. But before we do anything else, Tatiana Sanchez has all your news headlines.
Very much and good morning. The top stories from the GB newsroom. The search for a British teenager who went missing after a night out in Tenerife has entered a 6th day. Jay Slater travelled to the Spanish island for a music festival on his first holiday without his parents. But the 19-year-old has not been heard from since he called a friend shortly before 9 o'clock Monday morning, saying he was lost and needed water. Jay was last seen in the northwestern mountain village of Masca. Spanish police rejected an offer of support from Lancashire Police to assist in the search. Former police officer Oliver Lawrence told GB News, tough as the situation has been, every police force has the right to assess the situation in their own right.
They believe they've got the resources to carry out this search and rescue operation. It is an incredibly vast area which needs to ultimately be grid searched very painstakingly during daylight hours, because after night you're going to miss things. Obviously, they're using helicopters and dogs and resources that we've seen been used in other search and rescue operations in the last few weeks overseas with other cases. But these are very protracted investigations. Obviously, what doesn't help is the size and scale of the area. An 11-hour walk Mr. Slater was looking at. And to get disorientated in such a complex area means the task is even greatly difficult for police to try and identify where he is.
In other news, the Conservatives say they're going to focus on the nighttime economy and secure the future of Britain's pubs, bars, restaurants and music venues in its first 100 days of government. The Tory party says a comprehensive review would be launched to look at licensing laws, planning rules and other enforcements they say is holding back growth. It says the sector was disproportionately impacted by the COVID pandemic and the war in Ukraine, which drove up food, drink and energy prices. Meanwhile, Labour's pledging to put water companies under special measures as over 10,000 people have been hospitalised due to waterborne diseases under the Conservatives' rule. Labour says they'll give the water regulator powers to block the payment of any bonuses to polluting water bosses until they've, quote, cleaned up their filth. They've also vowed to make water bosses who continue to oversee law-breaking face criminal charges, as well as end self-monitoring and force all companies to accept independent monitoring to stop companies covering up illegal sewage dumping. Shadow Environment Secretary Steve Reed says the Tories have for too long let water bosses get away with it.
There are beaches in Bournemouth that get closed on some days in the summer because the level of sewage, raw sewage, is so high it's dangerous. It's dangerous to go in the water. Over the whole country, levels of raw sewage in our water are at record levels, the highest ever recorded. And yet the Conservatives have let the water companies who are responsible for this just get away with it. So if there's a Labour government elected on the 4th of July, what we will do is put the water companies under tough special measures.
Meanwhile, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage is facing criticism for suggesting the West provoked Russia's invasion of Ukraine by expanding NATO. After missing out on the BBC Question Time this week, Leaders Special, the Reform leader took part in an interview with the BBC's Nick Robinson. He said the expansion of the EU and NATO gave him a reason to tell the Russian people they're coming for us again. Home Secretary James Cleverly says Mr Farage was echoing Mr Putin's vile justification for the war, and Labour branded him unfit for any political office. The Liberal Democrats are setting out a plan to save chalk streams from environmental disaster. It comes as analysis by the party found over 48,500 hours worth of sewage was discharged into chalk streams last year. That's more than double the previous year. The proposals would see a public consultation launched within the first 100 days of a Lib Dem government, in which rivers and lakes could be awarded new blue flag status to protect them from sewage dumping. And households should brace for a £600 rise in annual council tax bills, regardless of who wins the election. That is coming from a report in The Times, which points to figures from the Institute for Fiscal Studies. The think tank says the failure of all parties to set out detailed plans on how they pay for social care proposals would force councils to drastically raise taxes. Increasing council tax by 5p per year would raise the average Band D property's annual bill by £600 by the end of the next Parliament. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Ellie and Ben.
Thanks, Tatiana, and welcome to Saturday Morning Live. And already you are delving into the inbox this morning, Ben. You can't help yourself.
Doesn't take me long, does it?
Doesn't take you long, no.
So someone, Graham, good morning, Graham. It appears you're in a very good mood. You said, this guy, Ben, is nearly on Ellie's lap. He's also done the same with Bev Turner previously. What's his problem? FYI, this Westminster studio, so Paddington is getting refurbed. We're having a spring makeover. From next week, it's going to look sparkling and, you know, brand new. But for the moment, we are in Westminster, which, to say the least, is quite intimate.
So it's a very small room.
Yeah, there's your answer, Graham. Elsewhere, Ellie, one for you.
Oh, yeah.
They say, Mel, good morning, Mel.
Morning, Mel.
GB News, in the interest of your contributors and viewers, not mine, obviously, can we have pics of Ellie in her Swifty gear later?
Yes, I promise. I will put them on Instagram when I'm ready.
What are you wearing again?
Later.
You're wearing
I've got a choice of 2 outfits. I've got a velour pink sparkly number. I'm going to Wembley tonight to see Taylor Swift. If you just tuned in, you're like, what are you talking about? Velour number, and then I've also got a tiered hot pink fuchsia mini dress.
And a cowboy hat?
And a cowboy hat and cowboy boots. And Elton John glasses with pearls on them.
So you're not changing halfway through, are you?
I'm considering it, actually.
Really?
Considering an outfit change.
OK.
Maybe one of the songs I don't like so much, I can go change my outfit. Because she has 13 outfit changes, so I thought it was time for me to perhaps give her a run for her money.
Little nod. Yeah, well, elsewhere, I'm on Saturday 5 tonight, so probably not as exciting as Taylor Swift. Actually, it will be as exciting as Taylor Swift. 5 of us going at it on all today's news topics. So.
There you go. So you've got a choice. You can watch Taylor Swift at Wembley, or you can be watching Saturday 5 on GB News. Yeah, that's where he wants you to be. Now, as they say, a week is a long time in politics, isn't it? Well, how about 24 hours? It's been busy, hasn't it? Well, let's take a look back on yesterday on the campaign trail.
Pay for private healthcare to effectively jump the waiting list.
Yes.
I wouldn't. The idea of the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, who is responsible for bringing waiting lists down, then saying to the public, but so far as I'm concerned, I'm going to jump the list.
But you can afford to. Most people on a good wage do afford it and pay for it.
If I am, elected in to serve as Prime Minister, my job is to bring those waiting lists down, and I'm not going to at the same time say, but for me, I'm going to jump the queue.
This is a man who tried to overturn the result of the Brexit referendum, who twice urged everyone to make Jeremy Corbyn Prime Minister, and who ran on a series of pledges to be Labour leader that he cynically then abandoned. My friends, because he has such a past, he doesn't deserve to decide your future.
If people know the outcome of something and they bet on it, I think that's immoral.
We've provoked this war. Of course it's his fault. He's used what
But we provoked the invasion of Ukraine.
And very interestingly, once again, 10 years ago when I predicted this, by the way, I'm the only person in British politics that predicted what would happen. And of course, everyone said I was a pariah for daring to suggest it. George Robertson, former Labour cabinet minister, who went on to become the Secretary General of NATO, has in the last couple of weeks said the war is a direct result of EU expansion.
Well, I can't work out what's been more boring, the election so far or England's performances at the Euros. But anyway, after missing out on the BBC Question Time Leaders special, Nigel Farage, remember him? He's taken part in an interview with the BBC's Nick Robinson where the Reform leader suggested that the West provoked Russia's invasion of Ukraine by expanding NATO. So we're joined now by GB News political correspondent Catherine Forster to help us unpick this. Good morning, Catherine. First of all, let's start with Mr Farage's comments. How's that gone down?
Yes, good morning, Ellie and Ben. Well, it's led to quite a lot of negative headlines for the leader of the Reform Party. Bear in mind, of course, that there's been now several polls putting Reform ahead of the Conservatives. Quite an astonishing place for Nigel Farage to be after this unexpected comeback less than 2 weeks out from the vote. So he's come in for a huge amount of criticism because, of course, the opposition, both Labour and the Conservatives, have taken this as a good opportunity to take a pop at him. So James Cleverly, the Home Secretary, has said that his echoing of Putin give vile justification for the war totally indefensible. Shadow Defence Secretary John Healey has said that he is unfit for any office. Nigel Farage himself, of course, is saying that he is being consistent and honest. And I think worth stressing that he did, of course, in that interview say, look, this is, of course, Vladimir Putin's fault, but also saying that Russia had been provoked by this eastwards expansion of NATO. Now, of course, there's not much space for nuance in a general election campaign. So I do wonder, there'll be plenty of Reform voters saying, look, he's only speaking the truth. But there may be others, and this is a position that Nigel Farage has held for a long time. There may be other voters who perhaps haven't heard this before, who might be slightly concerned about it, because, of course, Nigel Farage is putting himself forward, saying that ultimately he wants to be the leader of the opposition, and ultimately beyond that, perhaps 2029 or later, he really seems to see himself going into number 10. So I think there'll be a lot of questions about this. Of course, Nigel Farage would say that this has all been sort of oversimplified and misinterpreted, but certainly Labour and the Conservatives enjoying attacking him over this.
Catherine, I also wanted to ask you about the Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling. She's a long time, isn't she, Labour voter and donor, but she has said, writing in the Times, that she would struggle to support Sir Keir Starmer with his stance on gender.
Yes, big headline this today, isn't it? J.K. Rowling was a big donor of the Labour Party, but coming out in this opinion piece highly, highly critical of the Labour leader, and specifically referencing what he said a couple of years ago when Labour MP Rosie Duffield said that only women can have a cervix. At that time, he said, no, that's wrong. That shouldn't be said. But then just very recently, when former Labour leader Tony Blair says, men have a penis, women have a vagina, he's, well, I agree with Tony, and I would think lots of women questioning why, when a very powerful man says something, Sir Keir Starmer finds it easy to agree with him, but when a less powerful woman says effectively the same thing, that is not acceptable at all. So I think still some difficulty for Sir Keir Starmer on this issue, and not just Sir Keir Starmer, but there's been quite a number of members of the Labour Party have really tied themselves in knots over the last few years of the issue, what is a woman?
OK, Catherine, thanks very much for that. Appreciate it. We're joined now by the CEO and founder of Youth Vote UK, Alex Cairns, and broadcaster Jenny Trent-Hughes. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
What did you make of the last 24 hours, the whirlwinds 24 hours in politics, just briefly?
Yeah, I mean, I actually agree with you. I think the election has been pretty dull compared to the previous elections. I think everyone knows Labour are going to win. I think it's just about how much. And I actually think I don't really understand what Rishi Sunak's strategy is. I think he just wants to basically be in California on the beach, pretty much.
What about these J.K. Rowling comments today about Sir Keir Starmer saying that Labour's turned its back on women?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one because for a long time, obviously, J.K. Rowling has had her opinions about this whole topic. I can't actually remember where it started. I think for some time she had strong opinions, you know, to defend women. It's a very, very difficult issue. I think on both sides it's become potentially heated. It doesn't need to be. I think her point is that actually, you know, you need to make sure that women's rights are respected. I know there's lots of debates about whether, you know, trans women should be able to compete in certain sports, you know, mixed bathrooms, etc. So I think on both sides, there's a lot of debate. I actually agree with your reporter there. I think, you know, when J.K. Rowling makes a point and then Keir Starmer dismisses it, but then Tony Blair makes it, I think there needs to be some consistency here, right? Because that's not going to look good. And I think it can't look like Keir Starmer is being Tony Blair's fanboy, because actually that's going to look even worse.
Jenny, what do you make of it? It is the question that is plaguing the Labour Party, isn't it? What is a woman?
It's a tough one because I really do believe that whatever you genuinely feel, you should be able to say. And one of the things that I think is wrong in politics now is that you're not allowed to say what you really believe in. So whatever J.K. Rowling believes in, whether or not we agree, she should be allowed to say it. And whatever Keir Starmer feels, he should be allowed to say or not say.
Do you think he feels as though he can say what he believes?
Well, I don't think he does. But then I don't think he does in general. He does. I'm not overwhelmed with his presence. I don't feel that he always says what he feels, and I think that a lot of the times he says what he feels will get him in the least amount of trouble.
What do you make about J.K. Rowling's stance on the trans debate?
Once again, I'm sorry, I can't. This thing is doing something.
Your earpiece is
don't need it, don't worry.
Take it out.
Once again, I think one of the things that I think is wrong with the world is that we're not allowed to say what we feel anymore. You get branded immediately, you're transphobic, you're homophobic, you're racist, you're all these different things. And you should be allowed to have a different opinion, because if people aren't allowed to express their opinion, then there is no narrative, there is no dialogue. And we have to have a dialogue. So whether or not we agree with her is not the point. She has the right to express herself.
Let's talk about Taylor Swift, shall we? Because I'm very focused on...
Do we have to?
Tonight. Yeah, we do, actually. It's on the papers list, I'll have you know. This is one at this point. Because the Prince of Wales reportedly took his children last night. It was his 42nd birthday yesterday. Took his 3 children to see Taylor Swift at Wembley. And isn't that lovely?
It is lovely. You know, I think everyone is obsessed with Taylor Swift at the moment. I'm...
Yes or no?
I like some of her songs. I wouldn't say that I'm a Swiftie. I haven't listened to her new album yet. I'm sorry to offend you and anyone watching, but I think in general, you know, Taylor Swift, the broader point here is very, very important to the UK economy. We know that. Actually, you know, a lot of people have been going along to the concerts. And more broadly, Taylor Swift does actually do a lot of important work. She speaks up for, you know, women's rights. You know, she's done a lot of charity work. So, you know, the music, you know, you can have your opinion about that, but I think it's really good to see her touring the UK as well.
Yeah. And on the family, I think it is so lovely to see Prince William out with 3 children. I think it does show that they are, in some way, trying to get back to having a normal family life. It's been a really difficult 6 months for them.
Did you see the birthday picture on the beach?
Oh, it's lovely. We've got it
on
the front page.
That was nice.
I mean, just a normal family taking a beautiful family picture on the beach, jumping up in the air with their father. We can see it on the front page of the Times there. Just
looks beautiful where they live. They're Norfolk, aren't they?
Yeah.
There it is. What do you make of it, Jenny?
Well, I am all for Taylor Swift. I think Taylor Swift is wonderful.
I knew I liked you, Jenny.
Oh, no, if I had a daughter, I would be piping it into her ears while she's sleeping. I like the music. I used to work for a record company, and I like the music, and I think it's good. But more importantly, I think she's good. I think that she's a wonderful role model. I know, moving right along.
What is it about her that's so great? I mean, look, props to Taylor, she's making money. I really respect that. People love her. But is she on I love Michael Jackson. I think Michael Jackson was, you know, the king of pop.
She's this generation's Michael Jackson.
Really?
Yes.
We will have to do a special program just about that.
I might be sick that day. I might be off ill.
This boy, that do you know what he listens to, Jenny? So don't listen to him. He listens to screamo music. You know, all the heavy metal.
But I also like Will Young, so I have a vast array of music.
Oh, I don't know which is worse.
I like Metallica, I like Blink-182, Chili Peppers, but then I like Will Young. I like musicals, Les Mis.
So you can open yourself up to Taylor Swift, maybe. Should we move along to Farage and his comments, which has drew some criticism, shall we say, from the Labour Party and the Conservatives. It's that the West provoked Putin. What do you make of it, Alex?
Yeah, so I saw this interview. I think with Nigel Farage, when he makes a point, and it's interesting that he wants to become leader of the opposition. I think, firstly, you know, the polls have probably gone to his head. I think everyone needs to understand how.
In what way?
Well, in the way that, you know, in the next election, he's not going to become leader of the opposition. You know, he thinks, okay, let's say the Tories get 50 seats, for example. Very unlikely, in my mind, are the Tories going to decide, you know what, the MP from Clacton, Nigel Farage, let's make him the leader.
I don't think he wants to be leader of with the Tories. He says the Conservatives are dead. He argues there are no Conservatives left in the Conservative Party. And you say he's not going to be in the opposition, but there's 4 or 5 polls now with Reform polling above the Conservatives.
Yeah.
You know, under this electoral system, OK, Reform may not get as many seats as the Tories, but his goal over the next 5 years, he says, is to become the official opposition.
But I think where Nigel Farage is quite effective is, you know, he's a one-man band. I actually think he would really struggle at having to lead a big team of people, at having to be very serious. You know, leader of the opposition, or, you know, whatever you want to call it, is a lot different to what Nigel Farage does, where he's a very good campaigner, you know, someone that speaks his mind, but he isn't someone, let's say, you know, in the future he was Prime Minister, he's not someone that could be the G7 or could be doing, you know, the serious, you know, nitty-gritty policy details. He's exactly like Boris Johnson. We have too many people in this country that basically make massive points with no facts.
Do you think Joe Biden, for example, gets into the nitty-gritty of policy? And, I mean, let's be frank, he doesn't even know what day of the week it is half the time.
I think they're very, very different people. I think one person, well, yeah, I think one person, OK, yeah, don't get me wrong, I think the age of Joe Biden is an issue, but actually, you know, you know, for many years he was vice president, he was in the, you know, he was in Congress and Senate, you know, it's very different, but completely different to Nigel Farage. And I think that the point here is, I actually don't necessarily disagree with him. I think, you know, a lot of people can agree that the West did, you know, push Putin into a perspective of, you know, saying don't do this, don't do that, and Putin doesn't like to be told what to do. However, we can't say that the United Kingdom is to blame or the West is to blame. You know, only one person is to blame for invading a sovereign country, and that's Putin.
Jenny?
1, 2, 3. I do agree. I think that it's nonsense about, you know, anything to do with the West made Putin do anything. Nobody makes Putin do anything. But back to something that's more interesting to me is this whole Nigel Farage question. Because Nigel Farage has the power 5 years from now to be Prime Minister. You would not believe how many people I speak to who say, and I listen to the radio a lot, who say, you know what, I'd vote for Farage. And they're middle-of-the-road people. It's the same thing like Trump in America, where nobody thought that Trump would get elected, and he did, and nobody thought that anybody other than wackadoo crazy people would vote for Trump. And the fact of the matter is that there's lots of middle-of-the-road people who vote for Trump.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, a lot of the ideas being floated around today by people like Nigel Farage and Donald Trump, 10, 15 years ago, these were widely accepted common views. It's only now in this modern day and age that some of the things, for example, the conversation about what is a woman, I mean, it's just a completely absurd conversation where 15 years ago you would have just been like, what are you talking about? Yeah. But, you know, things have changed so much. So I think you have a point there where people who are middle of the road, quite hard-working people, just going out to work, want to feed their families, they're just, you know, it's common sense thinking. So I think that's probably the allure with someone like Nigel Farage.
Alex and Jenny, we're out of time for this hour, but you'll be back with us in the next hour. We have mentioned the constituency seat of Clacton-on-Sea, so we will now read you out the candidate list, which is Yovan Owusu-Nipal, who's standing for the Labour Party.
Giles Watling from the Conservative Party.
Matthew Bensalem from the Liberal Democrats.
Nigel Farage from Reform UK.
Natasha Osborne, Green Party.
Craig Jameson from the Climate Party.
Tony Mack, Independent.
Tassos Papananstu from the Heritage Party.
Andrew Pemberton, UKIP.
And that's it. Did I get that one right?
You did. Papananstu,
I should know.
I don't know if that's right or not.
My family are half Greek, so I should have nailed that.
We should have asked Eleni. We had a lovely Greek makeup artist earlier. We should have asked her.
Thank you, Alex and Jenny. You'll be back with us very shortly. We'll catch up with you later in the show. But coming up, we're going to meet this week's Greatest Britain. But first, we're going to sit down with pop star turned farmer to discuss the future of the food trolley. JLS star JB Gill. This is Saturday Morning Live on GB News, Britain's news channel. Back in a tick.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. Are you comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister?
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
On election night, we are throwing a party.
The GB News Election Night Watch Party will be live from Essex and you are all invited.
On air from 10 o'clock, we'll have familiar faces from across the channel, entertainment and lots more stuff as we keep our eye on all the results as they come flying in.
If you want to join our live Election Night Watch Party audience, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com/election party.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Recent polling suggests dentistry has become the hardest NHS service for patients to access, within NHS treatments still 15% lower than pre-pandemic levels. So a YouGov survey reveals that more than 70% of Brits describe seeing the dentist as difficult, compared with 64% for GPs and 42% for A&E services. One British man, get this, he even took to flying 10,000 miles for dental care, saying the extra time and money spent was far less hassle than trying to get an appointment on the NHS. I mean, it's a sad state of affairs. And a shocking 1/5 of UK adults have also admitted to trying DIY dentistry, including the old trick of tying string around a wobbly tooth and slamming it in the door so it comes out. So, should people be more careful when taking their teeth into their own hands?
That is one of the problems. Obviously, population growth makes it much more difficult for people to access NHS services, but they need to then catch up on the other side with dental services and increase the amount of dentists and access to dentistry, and especially NHS dentistry, obviously.
What's the cut-off age for free dentistry on the NHS?
So it is 18 years old, but there are exemptions around maternity, pregnancy. There's some free care around pregnancy.
We saw some data a few weeks back about the number one cause for child admission into A&E is tooth decay. I mean, that was shocking when I read it.
It's really bad, and what happens is people, kids with multiple decayed teeth, they basically have to be put under general anaesthetic, and then all those rotted teeth have to be extracted under general anaesthetic. Like, if those baby teeth start going crooked, then the adult teeth start going crooked as well.
Right.
So it is important to look after the baby teeth. It's really important. I think they should make it more central to their policies, definitely.
The People's Channel.
Welcome back, 10:28, Ben and Ellie with you on Saturday Morning Live on GB News. Time now for our giveaway and your chance to win over £16,000 worth of prizes.
Yep, that's £15,000 worth of cash and then a whole host of summer treats too. It could be yours, but of course you've got to be in it to win it. Here are all the details that you need.
Don't miss out on your chance to win our Summer Spectacular. And have we got a prize for you? First, there's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction. So you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats, and £15,000 cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Yes, good luck indeed. Now, every week between now and the election on the 4th of July, we're going to take a look through some of the top political viral moments from the week, because it's nice to smile, isn't it?
And there's been plenty of them.
There have.
So to go through them now is the former special advisor to Michael Gove, Charlie Rowney. Good morning, Charlie.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thanks for having me. Hi.
We're very excited to see you to go through these, because there's lots of fun viral moments of this week. Should we start with Ed Davey, who this week has been building sandcastles?
He has. When he's not getting himself out of the waters in his wetsuit, which I think the public can do without seeing anymore. He's there he is on the beach. Look at him getting his hands dirty, building a sandcastle. I mean, he's actually had a very good campaign, I think, so far, because it's balanced with some of the more serious videos that he's put out, being a carer. But he's grabbed attention, he's grabbed the headlines, and you know.
So let me ask you, as a political mastermind, is the fact that is all the this PR, going down water slides, bike rides, and so on and so on. What else has he done?
Yeah, well, he's been on water rafts. He's done all of that.
Paddleboards, falling into the rivers.
He was on a bike, wasn't he, with his legs apart? I mean, I know.
Goodness me.
Don't need to see
Is all that to make up for a lack of policy, dare I say it?
I think what he's been able to do is tap into where this election is so depressing because it's all negative. He has been the light, when there's been so much shade being thrown by the political leaders.
OK, well, someone else feeling the shade was the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. This is the moment he was shunned by a flock of sheep.
What are your thoughts, Charlie?
Well, luckily they're not voting, so I think it's OK to be shunned by sheep. but what is more important is the voter, which I think is coming back to really, in the final 2 weeks now, focus their minds on the actual campaigns that the leaders are putting out.
As a Conservative, are you worried about reform yet?
No.
No. You've been quite valiant in your staunch defence of Conservatives.
I mean, you can't disguise the fact that they've gained some momentum in the polls. But I think, what you saw yesterday was a bit of a slip up from Farage. And, some of the candidates that they seem to have recruited, I think the public are probably starting to see that actually when it comes to serious politics, if you've decided that previously that you might not support Conservatives and might go to reform, I think you'll probably see those people coming back.
OK. Well, talking about Farage and talking about the Reform Party, there was a moment this week. Did you catch the England game? Do you like your footy?
I did, yes.
Well,
yes.
So does Nigel Farage. He was at the pub. He was watching the Euros, but accidentally cheered for the wrong team. Let's take a look.
Did he, though?
Did he, or was that just a selfie and he's cheering for the selfie?
Yeah, I think it's probably a selfie. I think that's probably overwritten. But the interesting thing is he was the only leader to wear an England shirt.
Euro 96 shirt. Do you know what that is a nod to?
Well, the Euros in 1996.
No, but quite interestingly, so Gareth Southgate infamously missed the crucial penalty at Euro 96, and that was the moment in that kit. So that kit is now synonymous with Gareth Southgate. And of course, Mr Southgate getting a lot of stick this week after England's lacklustre performances.
Well, there you go.
But could you imagine, by the way, Keir Starmer or Rishi Sunak going to a pub, being greeted like that, being applauded and jumped on and sharing pints of beer with revellers?
No, because it's not their style. Boris would have done, and Boris could have done. But it takes horses for courses, and it's a different kind of leaders. But the two others, Keir Starmer and Rishi, keen probably not to wear an actual England shirt because they recognise that if you're going to become Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, you do represent Scotland and Wales as well, and Scotland who are still in the Euros. So I think Nigel clearly isn't going to pick up any votes in Scotland, recognises that and is focused fully squarely on England.
Well, Keir Starmer, he got some flack for watching the England game and sharing that picture. Angela Rayner had an England top on, some other aides did, but he chose to wear a plain white T-shirt, accused of not wanting to show loyalty to England.
But he did say to Christopher Hope last night in the interview on GBNews that he's very patriotic, and he also spoke about private healthcare and that he'd never use it. So let's take a little listen to that.
I am, elected in to serve as Prime Minister. My job is to bring those waiting lists down, and I'm not going to at the same time say, but for me, I'm going to jump the queue.
Your poor children, if you can afford, you can take the pressure off the waiting list by paying for it yourself. That's what Margaret Thatcher was said.
No, look, I'm not going to jump the queue when others are waiting that queue. I'm going to reduce the queue. The other thing I should say is this, because there are different ways this question is put. On acute care, people say, well, what if your child was really ill?
Yes.
On acute care, the NHS is absolutely the best. So much so that private hospitals refer into the NHS. So,
what do you make of it, Charlie?
Well, I don't think anybody believes it. Look, if you are in a position of wealth, because he is a wealthy man, and you do get paid rather a lot if you're an MP or the Prime Minister, and your kids are ill, and you need to get them into hospital, you do what any parent would do, is to get them there as quickly and as effectively as possible, whether it's private, whether it is the NHS, whatever is available.
Well, no, but Charlie, he's so virtuous. He's saying that, no, there's no way I'd jump the queue. Of course I wouldn't.
Well, he would, because I think the country, frankly, as well, I would encourage him as a Conservative to skip the queue if he becomes Prime Minister. I want our Prime Minister to actually be firing on all cylinders, as healthy as possible. And I think, whatever your views on Boris, for example, when it came to COVID, I think the whole country wanted him to get the best care, to get better, because he's the leader of the country. I don't care what their party political persuasions are, or whether, if you're the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, I want you actually to be fit and healthy. And if it means going private, go private, get well, get back to work.
And maybe the public would appreciate the honesty, just saying, look, I'm in a position of wealth and privilege, and if I needed to, I'd go private, and that would help to ease the burden on the NHS. Perhaps that would be the way to go.
I think so.
Directly after the interview, Charlie, head down to Wembley, as it appeared everyone did last night. Prince William also there with his 3 children. Sir Keir Starmer there with his wife, Vic. We haven't seen much of in this campaign. She's been busy working in the NHS, don't you know?
I hadn't heard.
Very busy.
She is. She's very busy. And, well, that's a lovely picture, actually, of the two of them, to give them credit. But a little bit of flack, I think, on Twitter, because, most people are out and about still campaigning on a Friday evening. But he is at Taylor Swift. And
he's allowed a break, isn't he? Even if it is Taylor Swift.
And he's appealing to obviously, a younger audience, a voter much like yourself, Ellie.
Ellie, just a quick one. Natalie on your say says, I agree with Ben. I don't understand the Taylor Swift hype. Michael Jackson's still the king, especially if you're a dancer.
Look, I will say she's not the most natural dancer, but she's very tall. I can relate to that problem.
Yeah, me too.
Well, she want to be starting something, and that do you see what I did there?
He can't help himself.
Oh,
Charlie, get out. Thank you, Charlie.
Culture for you.
Do stay with us. Coming up, we're going to be meeting our greatest Britain. You don't want to miss it. But, of course, we're also going to be sitting down with JLS star JB Gill. He has now turned into a farmer. He's going to be discussing sustainable food with us this Saturday morning live on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Bit of a drab start for some of us today, but generally a dry and a fine day and feeling quite warm when the sun comes out later on. A fine start across much of Scotland, a bit of a cool start here. We will see the clouds steadily increasing across the far northwest. Elsewhere, the cloud actually breaking up after a damp and drizzly beginning over parts of the east. We'll see some sunny spells, just 1 or 2 pretty scattered afternoon showers. So, as I say, for most, it is a fine summer's day. Temperatures creeping up as well, 23, 24 degrees, perhaps with a bit of afternoon sunshine. Always a bit cooler further west, and particularly the far northwest as the breeze starts to pick up. A little bit of rain trickling in here, so turning a bit damp by this evening over the Western Isles, and through this evening, some of that rain will spread across the Highlands. But for much of Scotland, it's a fine evening. Temperatures still holding up in the high teens into this evening as well. It will cloud over across Northern Ireland, but still dry and bright for most of today. In Belfast, fine conditions for most of England and Wales. This morning's cloud melting away to reveal some evening sunshine further east, and generally staying fine across the southwest. Just perhaps a bit more cloud spilling in here come the late afternoon and into the evening. And the cloud will continue to increase during the night. Still a bit of drizzly rain pushing through southern Scotland, perhaps into North Wales, northwest England, but for most it'll be another dry night and another fairly warm one as well. Temperatures, certainly in most towns and cities, holding up in the teens. What about Sunday? Well, a warm, humid feeling day. There will be a bit more cloud around, especially for Wales, southwest England, northern England to begin with, so a duller day. But even here, I'm hopeful that it will brighten up. Small chance of 1 or 2 showers. Some coasts in the west may stay misty, but for Scotland, Northern Ireland, some good spells of sunshine, and across the southeast as well. Should be fine once more during Sunday. And temperatures ticking up, going to get hotter still as we head into next week.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
welcome back to Saturday Morning Live. The time is 10:40 and this is really interesting. 60% of young shoppers are now willing to pay more for products that are sustainable.
Yeah, but equally, older shoppers are concerned about not just that, but about the importance and quality of buying British over, say, quality.
Yeah, so what does this mean? Are imported vegetables, imported foods a thing of the past? Well, we're joined now by a member of boy band JLS. He's now a farmer. JB Gill, really good to see you this morning.
Morning, JB.
Thank you, guys. Morning.
What do you make of this, then? Young people are willing to pay more for their food if it's sustainable.
Well, it's all been brought about by Co-op's Responsible Retailing Report, which they've just released. And actually, they were one of the first in their class, really, amongst retailers to do this research, but also to be able to feed back not just to other retailers, but, of course, to consumers as well. And what it's effectively shown and raised is that our tastes have changed, the things that we do, the way that we shop, the way that we consume food has all changed over time. And I think in the last 5 years or so, you've seen a real big shift. I can think back to when I was growing up, my children's age, I'd go into sort of Brixton, which is where we lived, and go to the market, go and pick up fruit, go to the butchers, go to the fishmongers, go to the supermarket as well. Whereas now we all tend to do most of our shopping at a supermarket or a retailer, and it's more of a weekly shop rather than sort of an extended bi-weekly or monthly shop. So all of those things, as I say, are coming to light, and it's helpful for the retailers, of course, because they can then supply demand, but then also helpful for consumers as well.
I've got 2 young kids, and they and their peers at nursery, they all don't know, for example, where beef and meat comes from. They don't know that farms exist and, fruit grows on trees. Very elementary, basic stuff. But a lot of kids, we grow up these days in supermarkets buying things in packages, or they get delivered straight to your door, and we've kind of lost that essence of farming and real food, haven't we?
Yeah, which is a real shame, because I think, one of the things that I love about it, sort of got me into farming in the first place, is that connection with food. I come from the Caribbean, although I was born here, I've got family, I've still got relatives that live over there. And so for me, that connection to where my food comes from is very strong. Whereas, as you say, again, it's down to sort of the lifestyle and how the family's structured now. Typically, again, I look at my parents' generation, you might have had 2 parents in the family working, but you definitely have that now, pretty much. And so that shift has meant that actually people are having a full working day and then having to do their shop or, prepare their food or whatever when they get home after a long day at work, nursery, whatever, do you know what I mean? So the family dynamic has shifted as well, and that all takes a toll.
And food security, in the past few years has become so important. It should be at the forefront of all of our minds. So buying British and buying local is so important. I imagine that you feel really passionate about that, now running a farm of your own.
Yeah, absolutely. We sell turkeys in a seasonal market, so for Christmas. And for us, it's really important, of course, that we have a good connection and a good relationship with our local community. But for me, I think people are starting to think about, OK, what actually goes into my food? I want to be healthier, or, we want the family certainly to be healthy. And, those sorts of things I think are really important, and worth bearing in mind, because that is effectively how the rest of our society works. And one of the things I'm passionate about is passing that information down to the next generation, because, they'll be sat in our positions here in, 10 or 20 or 30 years, and actually, how will they approach it? And it's not just about saying we want more kids into farming, we want more younger people coming into that industry. Actually, we need to, talk of the hot topic at the moment, politics. We need politicians who are going to be keen for, passing legislation that affects the food and the way it's grown. We want to have people in entertainment to be able to speak with authority on certain situations and influence people, because ultimately that's part of what they do. We want to have lawyers, whatever, educators, people who are going to be able to explain and give the information to the kids that actually this is where your food comes from and it's important.
Yeah, it's a challenge. Just tell me, JB, about what do the boys in JLS think of your farming exploits, and what's a bigger challenge, being a pop star or being a farmer?
Well, they've always been very supportive of me. They're probably not very happy with me because I don't give them discounts.
You're a businessman at the end of the day.
Well, I tell you what, if they come and do a day on the farm with me, working and mucking out, then maybe I will consider it. But no,
give me a name. Who's going to be best on the farm from the band?
Ooh,
Aston?
Aston or Arisha, I'd say.
Yeah, Arisha. We've met Arisha. He's a lovely, boy as well.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously, you know, got a great relationship with the boys, and yeah, they're incredibly supportive.
And you're still doing both, aren't you? You're farming and you're still performing. We saw you a couple of weeks ago performing. How are you finding the stress? Because it must be stress of a different dimension now.
Yes, I mean, it's just added to the stress of life. You know, it's like with a young family and so on. But yeah, I mean, I love it. You know, for me, especially when you go into these summer months now. You know, it's hopefully good weather outside. You know, and it's a great time to get the kids. You know, for my kids anyway, they get such a long holiday over the summer. So to actually do things as a family and be at home and experience that is fantastic.
Yeah, we went strawberry picking the other day in a local farm. It was amazing. You get a tractor, pick the strawberries, fill up upon it. It's very wholesome.
It's so nice for children to understand where their food comes from. It's a great education. JB, we've run out of time, I'm afraid. It's so lovely to meet you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, you too. Thank you.
And do stay with us. Coming up, we're going to be meeting the incredible woman who holds 2 Guinness World Records for ultra running. And she is this week's Greatest Britain. That's next.
This is GB News and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but actually it's about you.
And we won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear
all sides
as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Theatres and drama schools are being offered plus-size inclusivity training. Come on, seriously, is this really a thing? In order to tackle fat phobia, to apparently make the theatre more inclusive for bigger bodies, a lady called Ruth Ann Phillips, who is a plus-size theatre director, she's behind the drive. Now, apparently, her own research, so it's not exactly independent, showed that 9 out of 10 respondents should have training on size inclusion. Ruth is also the co-founder of Inclusion Collective, which is an organisation that provides training in creative well-being, body positivity and inclusive movement. Her website contains resources on fat activism, advocacy for the rights and dignity of fat people, combating discrimination and the body-conscious scale. This is actually about health. Ruth is conflating the two. Professor Carol Sikora, a consultant oncologist, said normalising obesity has become fashionable in advertising and the media, simply to sell stuff. But it's got nothing to do with celebrating diversity. Nobody needs to be fat. It's like encouraging risky behaviours such as smoking, driving after a booze up, or lying like a lobster on the beach in the sun. A balanced diet and lots of exercise are the cornerstones of a healthy lifestyle. He went on to say, how can anybody possibly justify these projects? Plus-size inclusivity training, please bring back common sense. Well, exactly. I'm for equal opportunity and for giving people credit based on merit and what they bring to the table, even if it is food. Only joking. That's where the way to my heart is through my gut. I'm looking for a man that can cook. But in truth, being obese can be dangerous. And whilst I absolutely agree you should love what God gave you, obesity is the biggest killer and costs the health service a fortune. People come in all shapes and sizes, and it's a wonderful thing. But to conflate body positivity with obesity is very dangerous.
The People's Channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes,
she could have said storm. You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. 10:49, Ben and Ellie with you on Saturday Morning Live. Now, my favourite part of the show, British endurance athlete Imo Boddy has recently smashed the 45-year-old world record as the fastest woman to complete the notorious UK Three Peaks Challenge.
Yes, covering more than 680 kilometres and over 10,000 metres of elevation. Imo smashed absolutely the previously held record time of 7 days and 31 minutes, which was set back in 1979. She completed it in an incredible 6 days, 5 hours and 43 minutes. Well, Imo Body, welcome to Saturday Morning Live. You are this week's Greatest Britain, and you truly are great. I've got your Guinness World Record certificate here, actually, which is brand new. You have not only smashed this record, but you smashed it with loads of room to spare. You had an extra day on your hands.
An extra day. I'm not sure we'll see it like that, but yeah. But thank you for having me. It was, it was brutal. It feels very weird being back to normal life, I must say. But anyway.
So traditionally, when people do the 3 peaks, I was considering doing it at one point, and I saw how a graft it was, and I thought, no, you're okay. but traditionally, don't they drive to each mountain?
Yeah.
So if anyone's not aware, it's Scafell Pike,
Ben Nevis and Snowdon.
Snowdon, yeah.
We started in Ben Nevis, we actually started at sea level in Scotland in Fort William, and then ran to Ben Nevis, summited Ben Nevis, ran to Scafell, summited Scafell, ran to Snowdon, and then finished sea level in Carnarvon in Wales.
So I guess the first question is why? What?
Yes, why?
What possessed
I know.
you to
I
do
feel like
something
that's
like that?
everyone asks at the moment. Why? Why do you do it? I love it. It's a career for me now, and I love the performance side of it and kind of seeing where I could go
and pushing your body. I imagine.
Yeah.
What's the training like for something like this?
So, obviously being London-based, and actually the whole challenge was quite road dominant, despite the peaks. So a lot of road running. I did 2 training weeks, one at Ben Nevis, one at Scafell. But other than that, it was just a lot of miles, a lot of boring miles.
So what was the hardest part? Did you get to a point where you thought, I really can't do this anymore? They call it the wall, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of pretty dark parts. I actually finished on the Tuesday, and I went, I spoke on a programme on the Wednesday morning, and they're like, what was the hardest part? And I just burst into tears, because I was like, you're like, I literally, the whole thing was impossible. But anyway, I can talk about it now. Hardest part was probably, I had a 32-hour stint, basically, when I finished, so we kind of went through the night rather than having a night's sleep. And we were doing cat naps, so we were having 1 hour on, and then 1 hour napping, and then kind of going again. And I had 2 1-hour naps, and then I was about to have my 3rd nap, and I just broke down on the floor, and I was like, what am I doing? I can't do this. What I wanted to do was sleep. And my coach was like, you can either have a nap on the road for 10 minutes or we can keep going. Anyway, I continued going and was able to do a 2-hour power nap a bit after. But that was quite a dark part.
Wow, you are absolutely incredible. And you knew you wanted to beat this time, didn't you? You knew you had to do it in a shorter period of time than 7 days and 31 minutes. So you just had to keep pushing through. Where did you find that strength from?
I don't know, you just grind it out. Quite a lot of people have said that. I'm like, I wasn't really thinking about much, just grind it out. Yeah. It was a massive goal of mine, and yeah.
And how did it feel when you completed that 3rd peak?
Yeah, that was quite something. I think until I got down to the bottom tournament of Snowdon, because I still had 15k to go to Carnarvon, which in reality, in comparison to the whole challenge, is nothing. But I think I just wanted to get to the bottom of Snowdon, and all the peaks had been completed. There was no chance of kind of rolling my ankles or injury on the peaks, and I kind of then had 15k to go.
And can I ask, as a runner, what's harder, going up a mountain or down? Because when I walked Snowdon, going down seems to be
going down without a doubt.
Yeah, why is that?
I don't know. I think if it's technical, I think it's the kind of trust and having the faith in going down. When my legs were obviously very tired and battered, going up was a lot easier, and going down was. Yeah.
And is there an Olympic category for this kind of thing?
No, there's kind of you can do nationals, world champs. Sorry, I hopefully would like to represent GB in ultra distance at some point.
That was my next question. What's next for you? Because this is a crazy challenge, but there must be more that you want to do.
Yeah, I'd like to hopefully go for some 24-hour running and qualify for GB at some point. But yeah,
you put us to shame, Imo. You put us to shame.
And actually, just to share with the audience as well, you actually haven't been running for very long, have you?
No, about 4 years solely.
It's incredible.
So yeah.
You are our greatest Britain this week. You are an inspiration. You're brave. You're full of guts, and we'll keep a keen eye on your future endeavours. Well done.
Thank you for having me.
You'll be representing GB News in no time, I'm sure. GB News. GB News. Well, yes, GB News, but also GB on the world stage, I'm sure. Thank you very much, Imo. So lovely to meet you. You are an inspiration. You are this week's greatest Britain. Do stay with us. Lots more to come on today's top stories. We're also going to be sitting down with a missing persons expert, Jay Slater. That search for him in Tenerife now on day 6.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. It's a fine day for most of us. Variable amounts of cloud, not entirely sunny everywhere, and that cloud will give a few light showers. For example, this weak front clearing the southeast, a few light showers here, and then a thickening of the cloud towards the northwest later to give some patchy rain. But elsewhere it's mostly fine. The cloud coming and going at times, and thick enough there for parts of the southeast to give the odd shower. But for the vast majority, it's dry, increasing spells of sunshine later in the day, and where we've got that sunshine, temperatures in the low 20s, feeling perfectly pleasant. A bit of a breeze towards the northwest, that freshens towards the evening, and thickening cloud arrives into the northwest of Scotland with outbreaks of rain for the Outer Hebrides, but that rain tending to be light, to be on and off, and eastern and central Scotland keep the sunshine into the evening. Thickening cloud there for Northern Ireland, some outbreaks of rain in the far west. Belfast 19 Celsius during the evening, so perfectly pleasant. Plenty of sunshine meanwhile across England and Wales, apart from West Wales, parts of Devon and Cornwall where lower cloud will arrive through the evening, and overnight that will tend to result in mist and drizzle, particularly around coasts and hills of Wales and the southwest. Meanwhile, the weak front that crosses Scotland pushes into parts of northern England, where we've got the cloud overnight, temperatures staying up at 13 or 14 Celsius. Otherwise, some spots could dip into the single figures. There could be a few mist patches around first thing. But for many, it's a largely fine start to Sunday. We've got this area of cloud across northern and western England. It'll be low and it will be drizzly in places as well. Some mistiness remaining around the coasts of the southwest of England. Otherwise, for the vast majority, it's a fine, bright day, and it's increasingly warm as well.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could win big this summer. First, there's a fabulous £15,000 in tax-free cash to ensure this summer is special. What would you spend that on? Next, you'll also receive the latest iPhone 15 and a set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction. You have to hurry as lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
On election night, we are throwing a party.
The GB News Election Night Watch Party will be live from Essex and you are all invited.
On air from 10 o'clock, we'll have familiar faces from across the channel, entertainment and lots more stuff as we keep our eye on all the results as they come flying in.
If you want to join our live election night watch party audience, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com/election party.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, I'm Ellie Costello alongside Ben Leo, and this is Saturday Morning Live.
Very good morning to you. Great to have your company this morning, and boy, do we have an action-packed show with our panel for today. All the top stories they'll cover. CEO and founder of Youth Vote UK, Alex Cairns, and broadcaster and life coach, Jenny Trent-Hughes.
As the search for missing British teenager Jay Slater enters its 6th day, we'll speak to a missing persons expert to try and piece together evidence in a case that is gripping the nation.
And following the very sad news that Hollywood icon Donald Sutherland has died, our showbiz journalist Steph Tecci will join us to discuss the tributes that are pouring in.
Well, do keep reviews coming in to us this morning. gbnews.com/yoursay.
Yes, and if you've wondered why we are in a slightly different environment, we've already covered it in the first hour, but Paddington, our studio, our original studio, is having a bit of a spring or summer makeover. So for today, we are in here, morning show style. Have you seen the morning show?
I have seen the morning show.
On Apple TV?
Yeah, I couldn't watch too much because it reminded me too much of work.
I feel a bit serious with my papers, so the sofa's not here, we're stuck here for the day, but we're back on Monday, the whole channel's back on Monday in Paddington, sparkling new furniture, new graphics I think as well, so you're in for a treat on Monday.
It's going to look great. But before we get into anything else here today, Tatiana Sanchez has all your news headlines.
Ellie, thank you very much. The top stories this morning. The Prime Minister says Nigel Farage's comments suggesting the West provoked Russia's invasion of Ukraine by expanding NATO were completely wrong. After missing out on the BBC Question Time Leaders special this week, the Reform UK leader took part in an interview with the BBC's Nick Robinson. He said the expansion of the EU and NATO gave him a reason to tell the Russian people they're coming for us again. Labour branded him unfit for any political office. Rishi Sunak says the comments play into the Russian president's hands.
That what he said was completely wrong and only plays into Putin's hands. This is a man who deployed nerve agents on the streets of Britain, who's doing deals with countries like North Korea, and this kind of appeasement is dangerous for Britain's security, the security of our allies that rely on us, and only emboldens Putin further.
The Conservatives say they're going to focus on the nighttime economy and secure the future of Britain's pubs, spas, restaurants and music venues in its first 100 days of government. The Tory party says a comprehensive review would be launched to look at licensing laws, planning rules and other enforcements they say is holding back growth. It says the sector was disproportionately impacted by the COVID pandemic and the war in Ukraine, which drove up food, drink and energy prices. Sir Keir Starmer will today pledge a fundamental reset to respect and dignity for the Windrush generation. The Windrush scandal refers to migrants from the Caribbean who started to arrive to the UK in 1948 to help rebuild Britain after the war. Sir Keir says the Conservatives have presided over a failing compensation scheme, and the scheme has only paid out 2,500 claims out of an estimated 15,000 of people who were originally considered eligible for that compensation scheme. Meanwhile, Labour's pledging to put water companies under special measures as over 10,000 people have been hospitalised due to waterborne diseases under the Conservatives' rule. Labour says they'll give the water regulator powers to block the payment of any bonuses to polluting water bosses until they clean up their filth. They've also vowed to make water bosses who continue to oversee law-breaking face criminal charges, as well as end self-monitoring and force all companies to accept independent monitoring to stop companies covering up illegal sewage dumping. Shadow Environment Secretary Steve Reed says the Tories have for too long now let water bosses get away with it.
There are beaches in Bournemouth that get closed on some days in the summer because the level of sewage, raw sewage, is so high it's dangerous it's dangerous to go in the water. Over the whole country, levels of raw sewage in our water are at record levels, the highest ever recorded, and yet the Conservatives have let the water companies who are responsible for this just get away with it. So if there's a Labour government elected on the 4th of July, what we will do is put the water companies under tough special measures.
The Liberal Democrats are setting out a plan to save chalk streams from environmental disaster. It comes as analysis by the party found over 48,500 hours worth of sewage was discharged into chalk streams last year. That's more than double the previous year. The proposals would see a public consultation launched within the first 100 days of a Lib Dem government, in which rivers and lakes could be awarded new blue flag status to protect them from sewage dumping. Sir Ed Davey has ensured it won't cost the general public to set up that new system.
Actually, it's really quite cheap, and we do a public consultation to start off, so the public can be involved in it. And the blue flag status, the applications are really quite cheap. I think it's about 425 from memory pounds. So we're not talking a lot of money. Where we have put investment, because you need to get behind it, is in a new regulator. We've called it the Clean Water Authority. We're not happy with the way the regulators have been monitoring and enforcing the law on the water companies. They've been allowing them to get away with this filthy sewage dumping.
And the search for a British teenager who went missing after a night out in Tenerife has entered its 6th day. Jay Slater travelled to the Spanish island for a music festival on his first holiday without his parents. But the 19-year-old has not been heard from since he called a friend shortly before 9 o'clock Monday morning, saying he was lost and needed water. Jay was last seen in the northwestern mountain village of Masca. Spanish police rejected an offer of support from Lancashire police to assist in the search.
We believe they've got the resources to carry out this search and rescue operation. It is an incredibly vast area which needs to ultimately be grid searched very painstakingly during daylight hours, because after night you're going to miss things. Obviously, they're using helicopters and dogs and resources that we've seen been used in other search and rescue operations in the last few weeks overseas with other cases. But these are very protracted investigations. Obviously, what doesn't help is the size and scale of the area. An 11-hour walk Mr. Slater was looking at, and to get disorientated in such a complex area means the task is even greatly difficult for police to try and identify where he is.
Former police officer Oliver Lawrence there. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen, or you can go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Ellie and Ben.
Thank you, Tatiana, and welcome to Saturday Morning Live. The time is 7 minutes past 11. Now, they say a week is a long time in politics. Well, how about 24 hours?
Yes.
Let's take a look back on yesterday on the campaign trail.
I pay for private healthcare to effectively jump the waiting list.
Yes.
I wouldn't. The idea of the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, who is responsible for bringing waiting lists down,
yes,
then saying to the public, but so far as I'm concerned, I'm going to jump the list.
But you can afford to. Most people on a good wage do afford it and pay for it.
If I am, elected in to serve as Prime Minister, my job is to bring those waiting lists down, and I'm not going to at the same time say, but for me, I'm going to jump the queue.
This is a man who tried to overturn the result of the Brexit referendum, who twice urged everyone to make Jeremy Corbyn Prime Minister, and who ran on a series of pledges to be Labour leader that he cynically then abandoned. My friends, because he has such a past, he doesn't deserve to decide your future.
If people know the outcome of something and they bet on it, I think that's immoral.
We've provoked this war. It's, of course it's his fault. He's used what
But we provoked the invasion of Ukraine.
Yes, and very interestingly, once again, 10 years ago when I predicted this, by the way, I'm the only person in British politics that predicted what would happen. And of course, everyone said I was a pariah for daring to suggest it. George Robertson, former Labour cabinet minister, who went on to become the Secretary-General of NATO, has in the last couple of weeks said the war is a direct result of EU expansion.
OK, there we go. We join Tom Harwood now, GB News Deputy Political Editor, who... Tom, what are you up to? Please explain.
Why is he kneeling with chickens?
Well, I have to say, yes, I'm perhaps used to be surrounded by politicians, but at the moment these are rather more, I don't know the metaphor, but yes, I'm with lots of chickens here in Lewes. We've just been with the Liberal Democrats. This is the latest stunt on the Liberal Democrat campaign trail. Actually, let me see if I can just feed some of these chickens here. Oh, it's grabbing my bag. Right, OK. The Liberal Democrat leader, Ed Davey, is here today to talk about rivers and pollution. But we have ended up on a farm, and I have to say, Ed Davey was just here a second ago picking up some of these chickens. He seems to be quite a natural with them. Whilst the sheep the other day ran away from Rishi Sunak, today the chickens were running towards Ed Davey. I'm not quite sure what that says about the state of the campaign, but clearly the Lib Dems wanting to talk about the rural economy, wanting to talk about the countryside, and most importantly, today, their big announcement on what's known as blue flag status, for rivers, for chalk streams in and around the southeast of England. Do you know what? You're very, very hungry. I'm just going to... Don't bite me. Oh, I'm being absolutely accosted by chickens. But such is the nature of the campaign trail. Of course, the other party leaders have been doing things today. Keir Starmer is in London, not surrounded by chickens. He's made an announcement on Windrush. And, of course, Nigel Farage has... Oh, my goodness me. Nigel Farage has got into a bit of trouble there, just perhaps as much as trouble as I've been with my bag and my chickens. But Nigel Farage has been talking about Ukraine and sticking to a line that he says NATO expansion encouraged the invasion of Ukraine. Now, whether or not that's true, it's certainly a contentious issue, and many people would suggest that NATO is a defensive, voluntary alliance. But that does seem to be the state of play in the election campaign. The polls haven't been shifting all that much, but something that might be shifting might have to be me, just to escape the wrath of these hundreds of very hungry chickens.
Tom Harwood, props to you, my friend, for being able to deliver that while surrounded by a flock of chickens. Bring me back some eggs, will you, please?
That is arguably one of the best things I've ever seen.
I want to see his shoes.
Oh, dear, he's actually such a natural. Who knew Tom Howard was so outdoorsy?
Maybe we can link him up with JB Gill from JLS and they can, get some farming together.
Anyway, that was worth the time. I wish we had a whole hour to spend with Tom just watching.
He did very well.
Chickens. He did very well. Very good. Now we're going to look through the top stories of today. We are delighted to be joined by life coach and author Jenny Trent-Hughes and the CEO and founder of the Youth Vote UK, Alex Cairns. Very good morning to both of you. Thank you for joining us.
Morning.
Let's talk about this really peculiar story. Actually, it's about the UK's richest family who've been convicted of exploiting their servants, Alex.
Yeah, so there's been lots of actual reports into modern-day slavery over the last few years, and actually because of that, we're actually seeing a lot more prosecutions happening. This is a really, really awful story, and we see it too often, not just in this country, but lots of countries around the world where, people in, various kind of third world countries are extremely exploited. They're absolutely desperate to come to the UK. They're kind of promised a better life, accommodation, jobs that will be within a family, and actually it turns out to basically be modern slavery. The government, whoever the government will be after the 4th of July, really need to look at this because it happens too often. We see it in countries like India, Sri Lanka, the Philippines, lots of people being brought to the UK and essentially exploited, and it really breaks my heart to see it still happens in 2024.
So this family, the Hinduja family, Prakash, who is the father, he's the big businessman. He's chair of the Hinduja group in Europe. He's worth £37 billion, so the richest family in the UK. He's Indian-born, but he's a Swiss businessman who lives in the UK.
Yeah. I grew up in a culture
Jenny, I'm
where...
so sorry, it's a bit of tissue on your forehead, and you do the same for me.
Oh, yes.
Take that off, thank you.
Thank you. I grew up in a culture... I grew up with household staff. And lots of things you just take as read. You accept that this is how things are. And I moved away. And then when I went back a couple of years ago, I was absolutely shocked at how the whole setup was. And I always thought it was okay. And when you go away, you realize it's not okay. And I think that that's the whole issue around the world. It isn't only that these people are billionaires, it's the whole idea of having, quote, servants. There's a big difference between people who help you order your lives and people who you consider servants. And in certain cultures, like India, they don't consider these people as equals, and they consider quite often how they're treating them. They consider they're being very kind to them, and if they weren't giving them, $11 a month, then they would be, eating dirt in the hinterlands, which of course is not true. But I'm proud of the Swiss for actually putting their foot down and saying this is no longer acceptable. But it happens all around the world.
Well, the family, the mother, the father, as well as their son, AJ, and his wife, they've been handed sentences ranging from 4 months to 4.5 years. They were acquitted on the more serious charge of human trafficking.
We've had cases of it here, it happens in the Middle East, it happens all around the world, and it's one of those things that we pretend is not happening. So,
yeah, we do. Yeah.
Maximum respect to the Swiss for making it an issue.
Yeah. Definitely. Let's talk about this story, shall we, which is all over the tabloids this morning, but we've picked one from the Evening Standard. This is about Kyle Walker, England's Kyle Walker. He has 4 children with his wife, but he also has 2 children with his lover, and they were both at the England game this week, Alex.
Yeah.
Very awkward.
Very awkward. I think it's one of those situations where you'd hope they're not sitting next to each other, especially, watching the England game. It was kind of depressing anyway. Kyle Walker played well, in fairness, so probably they'll both be happy for him, but...
I'm surprised he wasn't distracted by all the children.
Well, you know what? I think actually the first half he wasn't, but the second half the whole team probably were distracted. And I actually think that this is a sort of situation where, I actually feel for the son in this situation, because the son wants to go and watch his dad, or, the children want to go watch their dad play football, especially at an international tournament. And unfortunately, quite often the papers talk about, the awkwardness and the complication of Kyle Walker. He's been very well known to not necessarily behave. It's quite surprising he's vice captain. I think there's actually a lot better people in the squad that should be vice captain, actually. There's a lot of people that are, Jude Bellingham's a good example. You always make sure that his mum and his family can come onto the pitch, and, he's a much better role model than Kyle Walker. So that might be controversial, but I think I'm not surprised that this has happened, no.
There was a very interesting story related to this in the tabloids, that the Kyle Walker's team, or at least England, had put on separate security to make sure Kyle's former partner, Lauren Goodman, didn't come across his wife, Annie. So there were deliberate efforts to keep them apart at the Euros.
Why do we care? And I'm using the royal we. Why do we even care what these people are getting up to?
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is that they should be there together, because these children are related to each other, or have we forgotten that?
I guess the argument is, as Alex touched on, that these players are role models, they're England football players. As Alex has mentioned, Kyle's got some history.
But that should not have anything to do with the children. The children should all be there together watching their father.
Yeah, they get caught up in it,
and who cares what one random woman versus another random woman? They're not important, those women. The children are what's important.
Yeah, it's the children I feel sorry for. The tabloids today writing that all of them were in their kits and they all had daddy on the back. And Lauren Goodman actually did an interview, I believe, in the Daily Mail this morning, and she's essentially saying she took her child because he has a right to see his father. I don't know if they're seeing them in their personal lives, but he has a right to see him play football, and she didn't want to be on the sidelines.
And actually, she's got a right to be there. Actually, the mother of the children, they want to go and support. And actually, the papers really need to be careful here, because we saw a situation with Declan Rice's girlfriend where she was absolutely abused beyond belief.
Poor girl, and she's beautiful as well.
Yeah, and to the point that she and Declan Rice had to delete lots of things from social media. People need to understand that there are going to be, individuals around the football player, whether that's the girlfriend, the sons, the daughters, the mums, grandmas, etc. They're going to go and watch and support, and there shouldn't be this obsession with absolutely saying, what do they look like, what are they wearing, do they have daddy written on the side? I really feel for people that have anything to do with footballers, because they're given a hard time.
Yeah, no, well said. Let's talk about Dame Esther Ransom, shall we?
Yes.
You celebrated her birthday.
Yes. I was lucky enough to meet her and work with her a bit years ago, and I always had a lot of time for her, and I like the way that she's handled this whole health situation that she's going through. But what's really important is that it was just her birthday, and she says that, I have the chills now. But she was saying that she never thought that she would be here now, and that it's completely changed her attitude towards life, and now every single moment is important. And I think that we all need to be more like that. Instead of constantly whining about what's wrong with our lives, this is wrong, that's wrong. Every day, look at some of the things in your life that are good and say thank you to whoever you believe in.
Very good point. And all it takes is a little bit of perspective, a few minutes to just appreciate the things you've got, because actually, I was thinking about this the other day, we are some of the most privileged people in the world. We are the richest people in the world. Maybe not by our own metrics, where we have, you know, £37 billion families, but compared to the rest of the world, you know, we live pretty privileged lives, to say the least.
It does give you some perspective, doesn't it, when you think about someone like Esther Ranson, who is battling just such a horrific illness and still doing so much for other people and to raise awareness. It's incredible, really, isn't it? Jenny and Alex, we are out of time, I'm afraid. It's been so good to see you both today. Thank you very much. Stay with us. Still to come, we're going to be hearing all the latest showbiz news, including how Taylor Swift's gigs are boosting the economy, so you should be very grateful.
You'll be contributing to that tonight.
Well.
Remind us again, where are you going?
Wembley.
Yeah.
See Taylor.
How many outfits?
2 outfit changes. And a cowgirl hat and cowgirl boots.
And the viewers want some pictures of your outfits
I
for next
promise
week.
I'll post on Instagram. I promise.
OK, all right, good stuff. Right, this is Saturday Morning Live, only on GB News, Britain's news channel. Back in a tick.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
The Princess of Wales has said she's excited by a new report on prioritising early childhood, a cause, as we know, that she's closely associated with.
Yes, the task force findings claim that the UK could reap £45.5 billion in economic benefits if firms prioritise early childhood.
Well, let's talk about this now with our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. Good morning, Cameron.
Good morning.
I suppose it's characteristically Catherine, isn't it, to say she doesn't want to distract from this report by sort of people talking about her health. But we should start probably by saying she said she's not feeling well enough to come and talk about this in public, but sort of saying she's watching it, keeping a close eye from behind closed doors.
Yeah, absolutely. This should not be seen as a return to work by the Princess of Wales, but I have been told she's A, read the report and B, been briefed on it. But this all stems really from her work when she started being a working member of the royal family, where she was working closely with people suffering from addiction, mental health problems. And what she found is all of these issues tend to stem from a poor start in life, so the first 5 years of a child's life. So in January 2023, she set up Shaping Us, this awareness campaign for the early years. 2 months later, she convened the Business Task Force, so 8 members of big businesses across the UK, and over a generation, that could add, as they claim, more than £40 billion to the UK economy each year. We spoke to Peter Grigg yesterday. He's the chair of Home Starts UK, a charity which supports young families. Let's hear what he said about the Princess's role in this.
She's been a real driving force behind the report and everything it's done. And when we've spent time with the Royal Foundation, what it does, it reminds everyone that this is really important work and early childhood matters, that more businesses should get involved, that more charities are out there for people who want to do more to support families and children. So it's been a wonderful experience.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
On election night, we are throwing a party.
The GB News Election Night Watch Party will be live from Essex and you are all invited.
On air from 10 o'clock, we'll have familiar faces from across the channel, entertainment and lots more stuff as we keep our eye on all the results as they come flying in.
If you want to join our live election night watch party audience, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com/election party.
Hello, welcome back. 11:24. Ben and Ellie with you this morning on Saturday Morning Live. Let's see what you've been saying at gbnews.com/your say. Lynn, good morning to you, Lynn. You say Nigel Farage bashing by all the usual media. The interview with the BBC was so biased. And Danny, you say in the interview, Nigel wasn't supporting Putin's actions in Russia. He was just giving the reasons why he invaded Ukraine. But the mainstream media spin it because they're scared of him. I knew this would happen.
Mark says the closest Nigel Farage is going to get to Downing Street is if he takes the open-top bus tour of London.
Very good.
Also, lots of you getting in touch on Tom Harwood, who is on the Lib Dem campaign trail today, following Ed Davey. He was surrounded by chickens, he was feeding them, it was all a bit chaotic. Great telly. Loads of you getting in touch. Jack Jones says Tom gets all the chicks. Mick Smith says Tom Harwood surrounded by loads of chicks. I mean, it writes itself, doesn't it, at this point? Harwood with his actual fans with the little chicken emoji.
And just one for you, Ellie.
Oh, yeah.
Clive says, you are right, Ben. I would rather watch Saturday 5 on GB News than the woman who was called a singer, Taylor Swift, at Wembley.
No, I think we need to move on.
I think that's a bit mean.
It's a bit mean.
Taylor's great, I just don't get it. I bet she is great and I respect the hustle.
She's not here to defend herself, it's a great point. And 17 years she's been singing for. It's called the Eras Tour because there have just been so many genres of music from one.
She doesn't really need to defend herself.
She can sing.
Because her record speaks for itself. The money she's made, the fans she attracts, the audiences.
And even if you don't like her singing, she's pumping millions of pounds into the UK economy this weekend by playing in London. 300 million. She's pumping into the UK economy this week. So
my only point is
very welcome.
My only point is she's no Jacko, so let's just get that straight.
I think she's this generation's Michael Jackson. Let us know what you think. gbnews.com/you'll say.
Right, the search is continuing in Tenerife for British teenager Jay Slater, the 19-year-old man who went missing on the Canary Island on Monday.
Yes, according to his mother, Jay was last heard from at around 8 a.m. on Monday morning when he called his friend to say that he was lost without water and that his phone was on just 1% battery.
Joining us now to discuss this is missing persons expert Charlie Hedges. Good morning, Charlie. Thanks for joining us. What's the latest on Jay Slater this morning, do you know, please? And also, am I right in saying that the longer a missing person isn't found, the lower the chance that we're going to get a good ending?
Yes, first of all, on the progress of the investigation, I've not been there directly involved, so I'm just picking up what's going on in the media. So there seems to be continuing search activity at a high level and concentrating on particular areas, which is all good. Yes, as time passes, particularly if we think about the circumstances here, the most likely thing at the moment is that he's wandered off and succumbed to lack of water in the difficult terrain, would make it more difficult for him to survive. But we mustn't close our minds to other scenarios as well.
Charlie, because Jay's mother spoke about a Snapchat that she received saying that her son owed somebody money or something like that. There has been conspiracy theories surrounding this case as well, hasn't there?
Yes, unfortunately, that seems to be the trend with these things now, is for a lot of people to make assumptions, create ideas about what might have happened. But I would never speculate on something that I'm not directly involved in. And I would urge other people not to do the same, because it's damaging to the family. And it is pure speculation because there are no.
No, you can only imagine, can't you, what Jay Slater's mother is going through? But there have been just the cruelest conspiracy theories going around online. What do you think it is about the British public? You alluded to it there. Now, when we see these cases of missing people, that we do see these Facebook groups and WhatsApp groups crop up where people are wanting to be the inspectors or the detectives themselves.
Yes, I think that when someone goes missing, I also refer to it as the classic mystery. There are so many unanswered questions. People want to find those answers and questions. And the being safe on the internet means you can say all sorts of things without direct criticism. And certain cases attract more attention than others. This one seems to have generated a huge amount of attention.
So, Charlie, as a missing persons expert, what's your... I know you can't speculate, per se, but what do you think is the most likely outcome here?
Well, the search must continue. We should always keep hope, and in the eventuality we are going to find him. But after 6 days missing in this sort of terrain, it is looking a little bleak. But as I say, we must also keep our minds open to other options so that we're pursuing all options and all sorts of different outcomes.
And does this have any similarities to Dr. Michael Mosley, who, of course, went missing and was tragically found dead in Greece a couple of weeks back? Is there any similarities there?
Well, the fact that he went walking in rugged terrain with very high temperatures, yes, there are similarities. And there's been a few other cases in Greece recently where people have wandered off and had come to unfortunate ends. So, yes, I think there's a bit of a similarity between all of those cases.
Yeah. Is that just people underestimating the terrain and the foreign countries, perhaps?
Yes, I mean, it's very easy to wander off and get caught out by difficult terrain, the high temperature. If you haven't got sufficient water, all these things can have a significant impact on the body's ability to deal with the terrain. Plus, there's a high risk of tripping and falling in this sort of rugged area. So they all contribute together towards that sort of difficult situation.
OK. Charlie Hedges, missing persons expert, thanks very much for your insight. It's an extraordinary story. Of course, he was wearing a shirt, shorts and a T-shirt after being at that music festival. People were saying that in the mountain area where he was last thought to have been, the temperature in nighttime is 1 degree and even colder. During the daytime, it's quite warm. And his mother, Debbie, who's on the island now, she was speaking to the Daily Mail yesterday. We had Nick Peaser, the reporter from the Mail, on our show on Britain's Newsroom. And he was saying that she now fears, potentially, that he's come to some other kind of harm. Maybe he's been, she said the word kidnapped. I mean, I don't know what evidence she has for that, but that was her sort of growing fear as the days go on.
You can only imagine what she's going through, absolutely beside herself. Well, let's hope that he's found safe and sound. We, of course, will bring you any update that we have on GB News. OK, let's get your news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Ellie Ben, thank you very much. The top stories this hour. The Prime Minister says Nigel Farage's comments suggesting the West provoked Russia's invasion of Ukraine by expanding NATO were completely wrong. After missing out on the BBC Question Time Leaders special, the Reform UK leader took part in an interview with the BBC's Nick Robinson. He said the expansion of the EU and NATO gave him a reason to tell the Russian people they're coming for us again. Labour branded him unfit for any political office. Rishi Sunak says the comments play into the Russian president's hands. The Conservatives say they're going to focus on the nighttime economy and secure the future of Britain's pubs, bars, restaurants and music venues in its first 100 days of government. The Tory party says a comprehensive review would be launched to look at licensing laws, planning rules and other enforcements they say is holding back growth. It says the sector was disproportionately impacted by the COVID pandemic and the war in Ukraine, which drove up food, drink and energy prices. Sir Keir Starmer will pledge a fundamental reset to respect and dignity for the Windrush generation. The Windrush scandal refers to migrants from the Caribbean who started to arrive to the UK in 1948 to help rebuild Britain after the war. Sir Keir says the Conservatives have presided over a failing compensation scheme. And the scheme has only paid out 2,500 claims out of an estimated 15,000 people originally considered eligible for that compensation. The Liberal Democrats are setting out a plan to save chalk streams from environmental disaster. It comes as analysis by the party found over 48,500 hours worth of sewage was discharged into chalk streams last year, more than double the previous year. The proposals would see a public consultation launched within the first 100 days of a Lib Dem government, in which rivers and lakes could be awarded new blue flag status to protect them from sewage dumping. And the search for a British teenager who went missing after a night out in Tenerife has entered its 6th day. Jay Slater travelled to the Spanish island for a music festival on his first holiday without his parents. But the 19-year-old has not been heard from since he called a friend shortly before 9 o'clock Monday morning, saying he was lost and needed water. Jay was last seen in the northwestern mountain village of Masca. Spanish police rejected an offer of support from Lancashire police to assist in the search. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hi there and welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. It's a fine day for most of us. Variable amounts of cloud, not entirely sunny everywhere, and that cloud will give a few light showers. For example, this weak front clearing the southeast, a few light showers here, and then a thickening of the cloud towards the northwest later to give some patchy rain. But elsewhere it's mostly fine. The cloud coming and going at times, and thick enough there for parts of the southeast to give the odd shower. But for the vast majority, it's dry, increasing spells of sunshine later in the day, and where we've got that sunshine, temperatures in the low 20s, feeling perfectly pleasant. A bit of a breeze towards the northwest, that freshens towards the evening, and thickening cloud arrives into the northwest of Scotland with outbreaks of rain for the Outer Hebrides, but that rain tending to be light, to be on and off, and eastern and central Scotland keep the sunshine into the evening. Thickening cloud there for Northern Ireland, some outbreaks of rain in the far west. Belfast 19 Celsius during the evening, so perfectly pleasant. Plenty of sunshine meanwhile across England and Wales, apart from West Wales, parts of Devon and Cornwall where lower cloud will arrive through the evening, and overnight that will tend to result in mist and drizzle, particularly around coasts and hills of Wales and the southwest. Meanwhile, the weak front that crosses Scotland pushes into parts of northern England, where we've got the cloud overnight, temperatures staying up at 13 or 14 Celsius. Otherwise, some spots could dip into the single figures. There could be a few mist patches around first thing. But for many, it's a largely fine start to Sunday. We've got this area of cloud across northern and western England. It'll be low and it will be drizzly in places as well. Some mistiness remaining around the coasts of the southwest of England. Otherwise, for the vast majority, it's a fine, bright day, and it's increasingly warm as well.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but it's actually about you.
And we won't ever forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
Now more than ever, it's important to hear
all sides as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
We'll be there.
This is GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Saturday Morning Live, and it's time for our giveaway now. Your chance to win over £16,000 worth of prizes.
Yes, that's made up of £15,000 in cash and a whole host of summer treats too. It could be yours, but you've got to be in it to win it. Here's all the details you need.
Don't miss out on your chance to win our Summer Spectacular. And have we got a prize for you? First, there's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your Summer Spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction, so you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats, and £15,000 cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Yes, good luck indeed. Now, the protest group, All Under One Banner, are holding a Scottish independence march today as the organisation's year of demonstrations continues.
The march started this morning at Old Stirling Bridge, will be AUOB's second event of the year after a successful demonstration for independence in Glasgow last month. So joining us now is our man on the ground, Scotland reporter Tony Maguire. Good morning, Tony. I seem to ask you this question every time we communicate about this issue. I thought the Indy ref was settled and, you know, done for years ago.
Good morning. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I think this is very much, you know, a recurring contagion, if you like, to, you know, the repeated protests and marches. And certainly, you know, if you think about it, in the last 2 months, you know, we've had a new First Minister, a new SNP leader, and now an election. And I will say that, you know, independence played a very low-key role in the first 4 weeks or so of this election. And then all of a sudden last week, it just exploded onto, you know, the front of people's minds. We saw that SNP manifesto, which page 1, line 1, a vote for the SNP for Scotland to become an independent country. Now, you know, that then has got people talking about it again. And interestingly, although the polls over the last 4 weeks has shown a decline for the SNP, support for independence is still within that 45 to 50% ratio. I am, of course, here in Bannockburn, and it's no coincidence that the two sites for the start and end of today's march are Stirling Bridge, which, of course, in the first Scottish Wars for independence, a huge battle won by William Wallace. And here, that man you can see in the statue towering behind my right shoulder, Robert the Bruce, won a decisive victory here. But of course, you know, as the centuries went on, the question, has it ever been settled, and will it ever be settled? Well, All Under One Banner is the group behind today's march, and All Under One Banner sounds quite nice, doesn't it? All friends together, but the truth is, they're not. The Yes movement is indeed fractured because due to the gender ideology disputes over the last 16 months or so, the Greens will not march with Alba, and of course along with the SNP, they're the three pro-independence parties up here in Scotland. So Deputy First Minister Kate Forbes was doing the rounds in Glasgow yesterday, so I put to her, you know, First Minister John Swinney, he came in and after 2 weeks said that he healed all of the rifts of the SNP. Will he do the same for the Yes movement? Here's what she said.
I joined John Swinney's government because I was inspired by his vision to heal rifts, to reach out and to unite not just the party or the movement, but indeed the country at a time of polarising, toxic discourse. We were then plunged within a matter of weeks into an election. And so I accept that an election is not the ideal time to try and work together and to create that sense of unity. But in the Scottish Parliament and outside, the SNP is a minority government. We will only be able to work together and deliver change if we reach out across the Yes movement and then across the constitutional divide itself. But my hope is that after the 4th of July, with a strong group of SNP MPs in Westminster, we can restart that work to reach out across the movement and across the country.
Now, over the summer months when the weather is good, you know, there's arguably very little to argue about. That is usually what we like to complain about up here in Scotland. So maybe over the next few months, with Keir Starmer saying if he becomes the next Prime Minister, he won't grant a Section 30 to allow another referendum, well, maybe independence will be another point of contention over the next few months.
OK, Tony Maguire, good to see you this morning. Thank you very much.
It is interesting, that Indy ref debate. Nicola Sturgeon, I was just Googling it, back in the day, 2014, said it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Alex Salmond, the then SNP leader, said it was a once-in-a-generation opportunity. He said that a simple majority, however close, would be accepted by both sides, and that would be that. So,
well, it's still ongoing.
Just saying.
It's not going anywhere. That's clear. Thank you, Tony, for that report. Still to come, we're going to be joined in the studio by the wonderful Stephanie Tetchy for all things showbiz. This is Saturday Morning Live on GB News.
A
the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Plenty of mixers, plenty of lovely gin.
Yes.
What have you got here for us? Just explain what you've brought in.
So today I'm going to be presenting the Cotswolds Dry Gin and the Cotswolds Wildflower Gin.
Ooh.
So the first one that was introduced into our market was the Cotswolds Dry Gin. Now we have 9 different types of botanicals. We introduce into our pot still. We introduce well, obviously juniper berries because it's a London Dry. Angelica roots and coriander seeds, giving it that little limey flavour. Also, cardamom seeds, then black peppercorn, giving it a little spice.
Ooh.
And then the part that is more interesting that regards to the pouring, we have the grapefruit peel and the lime peel. We're going to start with the Cotswolds Dry, okay? So the first one introduced.
So Ellie was taking the mick out of me this morning because I said my favourite gin was, what is it, pink lemonade?
You like a pink gin and lemonade, yes.
You called me, I'm going to say what you said. You said that's a bit girly.
As you see, it turned into cloudy. Those are the oils of the spices because we don't filter it. Our gin is completely unfiltered.
Got
okay?
it.
I love this. It's 11:52. It's never too early. Cheers.
Cheers.
And would you have any, this sounds very juvenile, would you have any snacks with gin? Or does it ruin it?
Olives.
Ah, you can tell your culture.
It depends on how you're drinking it and where you are, like what you're actually going to do with it. Yeah. But you can have pretty much all sorts. As long as it stays on the salty side, that's what I would go for.
But a salty snack.
Yeah, that's what I would go for.
So olives, would you say, is that a good choice? Or crisps, nuts?
They're quite salty olives, aren't they?
It depends on your taste, really. Like personally, I wouldn't go for it, but I have seen. And the culture behind gin is drastically increased over the years. The flavours are all different.
That's really good.
Exactly. You see what I mean?
Oh, very nice.
Like that zesty, floral kind of flavour coming through. They're absolutely stunning, aren't they?
The People's Channel.
On election night, we are throwing a party.
The GB News Election Night Watch Party will be live from Essex and you are all invited.
On air from 10 o'clock, we'll have familiar faces from across the channel, entertainment and lots more stuff as we keep our eye on all the results as they come flying in.
If you want to join our live Election Night Watch Party audience, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com/election party.
11:46, Ben and Ellie with you on Saturday Morning Live, only on GB News. Let's see what you've been saying on your say. Lots of comments I can't read out, by the way, so we'll just leave it at that. But, Julie, you say, how cheering to see JB Gill from JLS this morning. Cheered my day, speaks such good sense too. I'm a massive JLS fan, and when they said we had JB on the show today, in the production meeting yesterday, I said, yes, get in. So I had to try very hard not to fanboy it up, didn't I?
I thought you played it very cool, actually.
I was like, who are you from? JLS? Oh, OK.
Oh, who are you? Yeah. But you were secretly very excited, weren't you?
We took a selfie picture, didn't we?
Yeah.
And how did I look?
You weren't very happy with the outcome.
No.
I thought you looked fine, but you said you looked like a goober.
A goon bar.
Goon bar.
Yeah, it's a
Can't
phrase.
say I've ever heard that phrase before.
It's a phrase we had at high school. It wasn't a very flattering picture, and it's probably the one picture I wanted of somebody, you know, a celebrity.
He wanted to put it on his wall, and now he can't. It's a real shame. But JB Gill really knew his stuff, actually.
Yeah.
He was really passionate about it. It's
amazing.
really good to see. And he's still performing, so he's a man that can do both. Get you a man that can do both.
Very talented.
And somebody's made a lovely comment about Tom Harwood, who was with the chickens earlier on the Lib Dem campaign trail. Nick says, Tom was absolutely brilliant. You've got some great fans there. It was brilliant, wasn't it, seeing him with all those chickens?
Should we have a self-congratulating message?
Oh, have we got one of those?
There's one from Jill. I don't like reading these out because it's a bit narcissistic, isn't it? But anyway, Jill says, I'm loving Ben and Ellie together, great chemistry and letting their guests speak and not talking over them.
Ah, that's what it's all about, isn't it? Having our guests, and we've got some great guests on this morning. It's been wonderful. And there's one more from Jack Jones who says, Ellie is like a bottle of Swifty Pop today. She's so excited. Can you tell? Absolutely beside myself, aren't I?
Looking forward to it.
I am, yeah. Taylor Swift tonight at Wembley, if you didn't know. Showbiz reporter Steph Tetchy is with us. Isn't it just amazing, Stephanie? It's like Christmas Day.
Swiftie mania, indeed. And she's bringing cash to London. London is not cash-strapped at the moment. If Taylor's coming to your city, she's going to boost the economy. Guess how much the economy is going to boost from 8 shows that she's doing in London?
It's millions, isn't it?
We're talking about £300 million. The
you can't deny that's impressive.
That is the Taylor effect. The Greater London Authority are saying that on average, each concert goer is going to spend about £471. Sorry to ask, Ellie, do you think that sounds about right?
Yes.
Yeah,
tickets are extortionate. I got a very rude comment on my Instagram earlier saying, oh, Eddie's probably going for free and it's probably VIP. No.
No.
Let me tell you, I paid a small fortune for these tickets and they're in the nosebleeds. I'm in the back row at Wembley and they were extortionate.
That is what we call dedication. That is
also at Wembley, I've been there for football, even a box of chips or something is like £9.
It's about £15. So people are really spending money, but it's worth it. It's not every day we're going to get Taylor Swift into town. And you know what? All the reviews have been good. It's going to be 3 hours of pure Swiftie mania, so I think you're in for a treat.
Was it her first gig last night?
It was her first gig in London yesterday, and she's doing today, and she's doing tomorrow, then she'll return back in August. She had some special guests yesterday. Prince William apparently is a Swiftie. He celebrated his 42nd birthday there yesterday in a private box with his 3 children.
Of course he did. And Sir Keir Starmer was there as well with his wife, Victoria.
Yeah. He said it was a part of a Swift campaign. So, you know, if you want to get those votes in, go to a Taylor Swift concert. So, but yeah, Taylor Swift does do great when she comes to London.
Is she? What's her fella's name? The NFL football player?
Is it Trevor? Travis Kelce.
Are they still together?
Yeah, he was there as well. He's been apparently there.
She's not dumped him yet and written a song about him.
Not yet. She's probably writing her new album. But apparently, I think they're going to get married. I think they're going to go the distance. She seemed really loved up with him, but I
really hope he's there tonight. I just want to read the body language.
Yeah, same here.
But apparently, you were saying she's not actually staying in London. She might be contributing to the economy.
Actually, I was reading in the papers today that apparently she's hired out this £15 million Cotswold cottage because she likes to feel like she's at home when she's on tour. So this cottage has got a tennis lawn, it's got a swimming pool. So I think Taylor's all kitted out during this tour.
I think the Beckhams have a very posh pad in the Cotswolds, don't they? So maybe she'll be bumping into them.
Yeah, but she's a billionaire, so this is nothing to her.
Yeah,
whatever Taylor wants, Taylor gets.
Of course, yes. Should we talk about Justin Timberlake? What a week he's had.
Oh, gosh, it's been a tough week. That's what he said on stage when he returned on stage back in Chicago. Unfortunately for Justin Timberlake, he was arrested for driving under the influence earlier this week. Yeah. He told a police officer he only had 1 martini, but by the sounds of it, he was a bit more intoxicated than that. A lot of people thought that he would cancel his shows, but actually the show did go on for him in Chicago, where he opened up to fans and he said, it's been a tough week. He said, I know I'm very hard to love sometimes, but keep loving me back.
Well, props to him for carrying on, because lots of people would go into rehab, they cancel their tours. I'm a massive Justin Timberlake fan.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, was, you know, driving recklessly under, you know, whether he was drinking or whatever it was, it doesn't set a good example to your young fans, and, you know, you're putting public lives in danger here. But clearly for Justin Timberlake, he's realised actually it's better for me to keep on going and talk about it with my fans when I can.
I think we've got some footage of a previous, this is prior to his arrest, of Justin Timberlake performing. If you just look at his, I guess his eyes are the biggest teller. If you're listening on radio, his eyes, I mean, he looks like he's had a few drinks at least.
It looks very bloodshot here. Well, you see, that's what happens when you do get arrested for things. People are going to start going back into the archives. This was at a concert in Las Vegas, and, you know, people are going to start questioning, was he drunk here? Was he on something here? Which is sad, because Justin Timberlake has always had this golden boy image, and now that's been destroyed, but he's had a tough year.
Yeah, but then someone else did make a good point. I think it was on your say, gbnews.com/your say. They said, show me any rock star or pop star who hasn't performed, you know, with a drink under them or whatever else.
I think the problem with Justin Timberlake, he has this clean boy band image from NSYNC, so
Disney
people, you know,
the Mickey Mouse Club.
Yeah, so, you know, people don't expect it from someone like Justin Timberlake, but you know what, he's human, and luckily no one was endangered from that, so he lives on.
Let's talk about Donald Sutherland, and what a loss this week of just such a great actor.
You know, we tend to say the word legend all the time, but he was actually a film great. You know, he had 200 film credits under his belt. The thing about him, he just had this charm and charisma to any role that he did, and he connected with so many audiences. I think a lot of younger audiences will know him as President Snow from Hunger Games, but, you know, film buffs have probably watched his stuff over 7 decades on screen, and each character he did, whether he was a villain or whether he's a hero, he done it in his own way, and his work was really a work of art.
He had such versatility, didn't he, as an actor? He really could apply himself to any role.
And that's why people have been, like, so devastated about this loss to the acting industry, because, you know, most actors get typecasted, where for him, he could do any different role. You know, he had this film called Ordinary People back in the day where he played the father of a suicidal teenager, and again, that's really gut-wrenching, and you get something like Hunger Games where he's President Snow. So his son, Keith Sunderland, mentioned it in the right way. He said, we have really lost a really good actor who contributed to the history of film.
Oh, it's just such a loss. And Jenny Trent Hughes was just saying, actually, just before she left the studio, that when Donald Sutherland found out that his wife was pregnant, he learnt from a midwife how to deliver a baby so that he could be helpful during the labour of his children. And he's a great man as well.
You don't hear that often.
You don't hear that often. Stephanie, fabulous to see you.
That's all from us this week. Ellie and I are back next week, I think, or the week after. We're off, aren't we?
Yes, we're off next week.
Enjoy Swifty tonight, Taylor Swift. I'm only joking. We'll see you next week. Take care.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. It's a fine day for most of us. Variable amounts of cloud, not entirely sunny everywhere, and that cloud will give a few light showers. For example, this weak front clearing the southeast, a few light showers here, and then a thickening of the cloud towards the northwest later to give some patchy rain. But elsewhere, it's mostly fine. The cloud coming and going at times, and thick enough there for parts of the southeast to give the odd shower. But for the vast majority, it's dry, increasing spells of sunshine later in the day, and where we've got that sunshine, temperatures in the low 20s, feeling perfectly pleasant. A bit of a breeze towards the northwest, that freshens towards the evening, and thickening cloud arrives into the northwest of Scotland with outbreaks of rain for the Outer Hebrides, but that rain tending to be light, to be on and off, and eastern and central Scotland keeps the sunshine into the evening. Thickening cloud there for Northern Ireland, some outbreaks of rain in the far west. Belfast 19 Celsius during the evening, so perfectly pleasant. Plenty of sunshine meanwhile across England and Wales, apart from West Wales, parts of Devon and Cornwall where lower cloud will arrive through the evening, and overnight that will tend to result in mist and drizzle, particularly around coasts and hills of Wales and the southwest. Meanwhile, the weak front that crosses Scotland pushes into parts of northern England, where we've got the cloud overnight, temperatures staying up at 13 or 14 Celsius. Otherwise, some spots could dip into the single figures. There could be a few mist patches around first thing. But for many, it's a largely fine start to Sunday. We've got this area of cloud across northern and western England. It'll be low and it will be drizzly in places as well. Some mistiness remaining around the coasts of the southwest of England. Otherwise, for the vast majority, it's a fine, bright day, and it's increasingly warm as well.
Looks like